Welcome back, lovely family of Visa Franchise, on this beautiful Saturday morning, 12:34 Eastern Time from Miami, Florida. We're holding this emergency live stream to talk about the Trump administration's, um, you know, new, let's say, executive order, the bombshell that just being dropped on the U.S. immigration system, which is 100K annual fee for H-1B visas, covering both new applications and renewals. I'm joined here by immigration attorney Grant Dwyer, who's also the in-house legal counsel here at Visa Franchise. We're doing this for you guys. We're just attempting to clear the air with what we know so far. It's news to us as well. Didn't exist in our lives since since yesterday, really. So we would really appreciate your support in this. If you just give this video a like and just comment your questions, sending your questions, that would be great. And stay tuned, because what we're going to be doing after this particular live is that we'll talk about what comes next. We'll talk about the implications of it on in alternative ways, alternative visa ways. So there will be a lot to talk about. But first and foremost, Grant Dwyer. Grant, welcome to the show, and thanks for doing this. So I'm just gonna give you the stage to sort of like make sense of what is happening.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Alaattin. So I think the first thing to note is that, there's been a lot of what can feel like chaos and uncertainty the last 8 or 9 months with the new presidential administration, and a lot of questions that arise as the new president, makes announcements and as the media discusses these things. The first point I would make, and I know you know this very well, Alaattin, is that in all of these circumstances, the best thing really to do is wait and see, right? What happened yesterday with regard to some of these presidential proclamations is the president proposing a change to how the United States does business, right? Anyone who's dealt with the United States government knows it's a big organization. There's a lot of stakeholders and a lot of checks and balances. So these bombshells were kind of dropped on a Friday. Everyone in the world of immigration that we work in and we live in, we're all talking about this, and we're all kind of monitoring to see what happens next. I think the best context to understand some of these proposed changes to the H-1B is kind of taking the temperature of the culture in the United States right now, right? And understanding that there's been a lot of demographic change in the United States. There's been a lot of economic change in the United States, particularly over the last 20 or 30 years. And one of the big issues that President Trump campaigned on was a kind of return to a more protectionist mentality in the United States, where voters seem to be communicating, we want the U.S. government to protect jobs for U.S. citizens, right? Every conversation I have with someone who's applying for a visa or a permanent residence, I always start with the same point. And it sounds kind of cynical, right? But I think it's a good place to begin. And that point is, the United States government doesn't want you here, right? And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I think that there's some truth there. They want to protect jobs and economic opportunities for U.S. citizens. That's the default position. That's where we begin. So every single applicant who submits a petition and says, can you give me a visa, or can you give me a permanent resident card? What that applicant is saying to the U.S. government is, can you make an exception for me? That's what we do every day. We ask the government to make exceptions. And the U.S. government will make exceptions, but usually they have their own conditions. And the condition almost always can boil down to one point. If we make this exception and give you a visa or give you a permanent resident card, will you make things better here for the United States? Will you make us richer? Will you create jobs? Will you improve the quality of life? Will you do something for us? So every visa application, every green card application is about that basic deal or that basic trade. You let me in and I will make your country better, right? So that's the context. And I think it's best to understand what the president announced yesterday as continuing that conversation, right? He's saying, listen, we are still going to issue these visas. We are still going to issue these permanent residences, but we're going to have a tougher conversation about what can you do for us. I think that's the overall context. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely does make sense to me, and that definitely does make sense to a lot of people, especially people in the administration as well. That is not to say that a lot of people's lives are now going to be in shambles. There's going to be a lot of anxiety. There's going to be a lot of people, because this isn't just for new applications. This will cover renewals as well. If you've been on H-1B and you were banking on the fact that, hey, look, I'll just renew this for the 6-year mark. But all of a sudden now your employer needs to donate $100,000 US. Will that be possible for everybody? I imagine not. Will that be possible for some? Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you're a part of a very, very big corporation like your Apples and Microsofts and Googles and Amazons, and you're getting paid $500,000, $700K, $800K, maybe, there could be an arrangement, and that 100K could go towards the H-1B visa. That's one way of looking at it. However, there are people on H-1B whose entire salaries are barely 100K, maybe just a little lower than. So for those people, it'll be there's got to be a lot of alternative way seeking, and it's going to be an uphill battle. Now, the good thing is that there are always alternatives in the U.S. immigration system. It is, I always say this, by the way, it's one of the most advanced immigration systems in the world that I have seen. So there will for sure be a lot many alternatives to seek. Now, that being said, guys, for those who are joining the live, please just give the video a like. It's a nice Saturday. We're just having this emergency podcast to address your questions and clear the air a little bit with what we know so far. We're joined by Grant Dwyer, who's an immigration attorney, who's an in-house counsel here at Visa Franchise. And in the upcoming days, we'll be uncovering this issue more and more with the content that we'll be creating. We'll talk about the alternatives, the O1s, E2s, L1s, and whatever the case may be. So for that, I'd say, please click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because we will take this issue to our heart and try to do our best as Visa Franchise to reduce this anxiety and be of help. Be of help. That's what we're going to do. So circling back to the news, Grant, who do you think this is going to affect the most?
I think you raised a good point with regard to this $100,000, right? And to be clear, what the president did yesterday is issue what's called the presidential proclamation, right? And a lot of President Trump's previous attempts to kind of put his hand into the immigration process were through a mechanism called an executive order. The presidential proclamation is a bit more limited, and it's based on powers that the Constitution gives to the person holding the office of the presidency to address specifically the entry of foreign nationals into the United States, right? So as you point out, the main point and what's been making all the news yesterday was that if someone intends to enter the United States from outside on an H-1B, either the person or their sponsor / employer has to make a payment to the federal government of $100,000 per visa. And this will only last for this 1 year that it's authorized. So what that essentially means, as you suggest, is that if I'm an employer and I'm seeking to sponsor and bring in an H-1B visa holder, I need to account for this new $100,000 that I'm going to spend. And that's a big punch, particularly to smaller employers, right? If I've budgeted a certain number of dollars to pay for this employee, well, that budget just increased by 100,000. That may double may double or triple or do raise that amount of money that is going to be required to bring in the foreign worker. And not only that, Alaattin, but also within this proclamation, there's an instruction to raise what they call the prevailing wage floor for the H-1B worker, right? And it's not specified numerically, but presumably the next step in this proclamation is to say, hey, we are mandating that if you as an employer want to hire an H-1B worker from overseas, not only do you have to pay this $100,000 to the United States government, but you must pay this worker a floor salary. And the numbers that I've seen bounced around on the internet in the last 24 hours are $150,000, right? Mm-hmm. Which is more than a lot of H-1B workers are currently being paid. So it becomes really expensive now to have an H-1B worker, right? So that I think that will impact a lot of people's lives. And I could well understand the anxiety that this kind of talk is causing.
Well, that 100K isn't even going to the employee's pocket. That's going to the government, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if I'm sitting in a country that's not the United States today, and I've got a job offer, right? And I've got a United States company who's offered me the job, and the idea is I will come and do that work as an H-1B visa holder. The conversation between me and my employer has changed tremendously today. Because number one, my employer is telling me, listen, Grant, we want to hire you. You're the right guy for the job, right? But in order to hire you, we've got to give $100,000 to the government. And potentially the salary we have to pay you might have a floor of $150,000 a year, right? So now we're $250,000 in for 1 year of employment. And we're going to start to look at some other candidates here, and maybe we can get a lot more cheaply than you, right? So the real danger is that a lot of the employment possibilities for H-1B visa holders could go away very quickly.
Yeah, that seems to be what's in the horizon, for sure. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But let me ask you a question for those who are joining. And may not really understand what an executive order means. So when a president issues an executive order, is it immediately in place or does it have to pass through Congress? I can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Let me check on my microphone.
All right, now you're back.
Okay. In any regard, so it's a good question. An executive order has a lot more checks and balances in it than does a presidential proclamation, right? And I'm sure if you followed the news over the last 8 or 9 months, you've seen President Trump issue a number of executive orders that get challenged in court and oftentimes are found to be unconstitutional or illegal and are not then enforced. And this happened a lot in his first term as well. The White House yesterday seems to have been learning a little bit from those issues. And this time, what the president has invoked is a presidential proclamation, which is much more direct. It's limited in the scope that he can use it. It can only be used with regard to the entry of foreign nationals into the United States, but it's not as subject to the courts, right? So there still will be a process going forward where the rest of the United States government gets to weigh in on these proclamations, but it's more likely President Trump will get his way because he's using a different mechanism now.
Okay, so will this be in effect soon?
The proclamation itself gives instructions and envisions that this will be in effect within 90 days, right? So it could well be, Trump's political party, the Republicans, have control of Congress right now. He seems to have, the support of United States voters. So I would anticipate that this may come into effect soon.
Okay, got it. So, by the way, guys, if you have any questions while we have immigration attorney Grant Dwyer here, please send in those questions. We would like to turn this into an interactive segment as much as possible. And please don't forget to give the video a like, and also subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification button, as in the upcoming days we'll be creating more content about what is to come and the ways to sort of navigate this. That being said, Grant, here's a question from my end. Suppose that I am a software engineer now employed in a tech company in America. I'm on H-1B, and this is going to affect me and my family. And going back to my home country isn't really in my interest, at the very least in my family's interest. So I will definitely be looking for alternative ways. What could be let's say, the most immediate alternative ways that I can look at, sort of like switch to visa and gain more independence to continue staying in the US?
That's a great question. And I think that's really the question that ought to drive people to reach out to Visa Franchise and give us a call, shoot us an email, because there's a variety of ways to solve this issue, right? One of the things I think you're alluding to is there's a whole class of visas called the talent visa, right? And the talent visa, I'll refer back to something I said earlier, which, I don't always, maybe I say it too frankly, but there's a basic trade here where the United States government says, we don't want you here unless you can give us something. And the talent visa is one answer to that trade question. The talent visa allows an applicant to say, listen, I have extraordinary talent and ability. And if you permit me to live and work in the United States, not only will I benefit, but the United States will benefit. I will create jobs. I will create opportunities. I will improve systems. I will improve institutions and organizations because I'm a talented person, right?
Mm-hmm.
The talent visa would be a natural place for someone with an H-1B visa who's feeling a little anxious about circumstances to move, right? That would be the first conversation I would have with anyone who reaches out today, anxious about their status. Have you considered a talent visa? And the way those visas are submitted is that a team like Visa Franchise, working with a lawyer like me, will gather evidence of that person's extraordinary ability, things they've accomplished professionally in their lives, and demonstrate and show to the United States government, hey, this person's really talented, and we are all better off with this person in the United States.
Sure. And what you're referring there, the technical name of it is the O1 visa. O1As and O1Bs for differently talented people, for sure, who may not be on H-1B. But for those who are on H-1B, I guess O1A seems to be the most natural progression from here onwards, correct?
Absolutely. And the O1 also kind of has a big brother with some of these, what we call the EB applications, where someone with real demonstrable extraordinary talent can not only apply for a visa and be given one, but can also apply for permanent residence.
Sure. Now let's go through some of the comments before we explore more alternative options for the H-1B. We have not necessarily questions, but a lot of comments from an account named Billionaire Investor here. India will create its own Silicon Valley thanks to Trump. 400K, you can find millions of employees in India. To prepare such a mass talent like that of India, US needs 15 years, or you can say the entire generation. So, okay, circling back to the very first part of the live stream and the policies that are in place today. Obviously, there will be these effects that we could see. What's your reflection on these comments? Do you think that this is really in the interest of the US, or could that create a friction where most of the talent that could otherwise come to the US wouldn't necessarily come here and sort of like develop other centers of attractions, aka the Silicon Valleys around the world?
Those are interesting comments, and I understand there will probably be some anger generated by these decisions on the part of President Trump. And they raise some very legitimate questions about whether or not, if these proposals become real, and let's keep in mind, these changes have not happened yet. All that's happened is that the president has made a proclamation, right? The United States Customs and Immigration Service, the United States Department of Justice, the United States Department of Commerce, all of these other agencies will still weigh in and have a role to play in this conversation. But if these things come to pass, I think United States citizens will have to ask some tough questions about what the right balance is, right? I saw in one of the conversations online since yesterday, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a software guy. Someone made the claim that for job positions with Amazon hosting employers, there are something like 100 applicants for every engineer hired, right? 100 applicants. And again, I don't know if that number is legitimate, but I think the point is legitimate in such that there are a lot of talented people. There are a lot of people who've studied computer science, computer engineering, and there aren't necessarily enough jobs for all of them, right? I think those are the circumstances that give rise to this protectionist impulse in the United States, right? This sense that, well, there aren't enough good, high-paying tech jobs to go around. It's the job of the United States government to protect those opportunities for Americans. Is that the right thing to do? It's hard to know, right? I think anyone who studied the American economy and the American tech sector over the past 20, 30 years would have to conclude that tremendous innovation has been brought to the United States by immigrants and by visa holders, right? There was a lot of talk about this very issue at the end of 2024. I may mispronounce his name, but American politician Vivek Ramaswamy, I think his last name is.
Vivek Ramaswamy, correct.
Tweeted in support of the H-1B program, received a lot of negative feedback. Elon Musk weighed in on Twitter or on X supporting the H-1B program. And this was before President Trump, who had been elected, had even yet been sworn into office. And there was a big kerfluffle about this issue, 9-10 months ago. And one of the points that Elon Musk made at the time was that he feels he is only in the United States today because of programs like H-1B. And the fact that the United States can point to companies like Tesla, or I believe he worked in the early days of PayPal, right? Or his SpaceX rocket program, is because of talented non-Americans like Elon Musk who decided to immigrate to the United States and have radically improved the quality of life and the economy in the United States. So I think Billionaire Investor raises a good point that the United States needs to find a balance. And for those in the audience listening who, as you point out, maybe hold H-1Bs or are thinking of applying for H-1Bs, I think the message is don't give up, right? There's a path to a visa in the United States. There's a path to a green card. There's a path to citizenship in the United States. And in times like now, what's important is just making wise strategic decisions about which is the best path for you. And if H-1B right now looks a little more challenging, look into the O-1, look into the L-1. The L-1 is another great visa opportunity for talented workers.
Yeah. And as well as the E-2 visa. I mean, certain nationalities aren't really a part of the program, but as you know, United States of America has trade treaties with over 80 countries around the world. And if you make a substantial investment in the United States, and this substantial investment has really over time been translated into an investment in the range of 100K or so, that you can get the E2 visa, and that's a 5-year visa, and your spouse can work, and it can work vice versa, which means that provided you have a spouse and your spouse invests 100K, opens up a business, that gives you an EAD, a work authorization, which you can technically work for anybody in the country. Really, you don't really have to work for the that particular business. So E2 visa, from that perspective, does make a lot of sense for those who are looking for an alternative on H-1B, correct?
I think that's a brilliant idea. I mean, and the danger of you talking about E2 visas is I could sit here on live and talk all day. You're going to have to cut me off. I love the E2 visa, and it's probably the visa I write the most. With the most frequency. But I think you've highlighted a really important path for anyone who may be anxious or worried about an H-1B status today. And that path is that if you can demonstrate that you or your spouse hold a passport from one of these treaty countries, and anyone can Google right now E2 treaty countries and see the list. If you hold one of those passports, or your spouse does, and you're able to make a substantial investment into a United States business, you can start your own business, you can purchase a franchise, you can buy an existing business. If you can make that investment, there's a very good probability you will qualify for an E2 visa, and your spouse can work anywhere, can work for the company for whom you wish you had the H-1B. And there's no salary floor. There's no 1-year limit. There's no $100,000 donation to the government. You just get the job that you wanted to have in the first place. So the E2 might be a very good solution for some of these folks.
Yeah, and let me share my screen here, and this is a good moment to sort of like highlight Visa Franchise. By the way, guys, we wrote a book called Own Your American Dream, and we went back and have spoken to 20 plus success stories, and these are our clients that we were able to help over the years. And there are different strategies. There are O1s, EB1s, EB2 NIWs, L1s, and of course E2 visas as well. If you haven't already, please register for the book. This is free for the next 3 days. We send you the book, and from then on, you can read it and claim your discovery solution call. That is free. But that being said, Grant, over the years, we really triple down on our franchise visa program, which is done through the E2 visa. What this is basically is that you invest something in the region of 100K, sometimes even less, to buy a franchise, and you get a 5-year E2 visa, and your spouse is able to work. And this doesn't require any talent background. You could be a very talented software engineer or someone who's on H-1B. Your spouse may not be in the same boat, may not have the same or similar qualifications as you do. But here, this is not what is being looked at. What is being looked at is the investment substantial? Can you prove the source of funds and things of that nature? And provided that happens, your spouse gets the E2 visa for 5 years, and you can get to work anywhere in America, really. And for that, I'd say look into the E2 visa. We've been doing this for 10 plus years and helped over 2,000 families across the globe, and a lot of success stories here. If you go on visafranchise.com, residency by investment, click on success stories, you'll see many people that we helped on E2 visa, as well as different visas such as O1s and EB1s, EB2s, EB2 NIWs. So just read and educate yourself on it. And we also have over 100 cases, interviews with our client who bought a franchise or who brought in their businesses here and got the E2 visa. We currently have the biggest library on YouTube. Please go in there and check it. And I think this could be a path for you. If that is the case, schedule your free expert call. We'll be asking you some eligibility questions to understand whether you're eligible. This will take something in the region of 2 minutes of your time. And once we have that information, you will be sent a link and we'll see each other on a call. That being said, Brent Dwyer, let's talk a bit about the O1 visa. I know, we touched upon this subject many times, but it seems like I don't like the word cheap, but it seems like the cheapest or the most affordable way of transitioning from an H-1B visa. So, what do you think about the possibility of somebody switching from H-1B to O1 visa? What would be some of the criteria that applicant would already have, and maybe work on some others to better position themselves?
Here's the way I would think about it if I were sitting in their chair, right? Every one of these applications, and the O1 is a perfect example, is a conversation, right? You're having a conversation with the US government and you're trying to get a deal done. And the deal, I know I've said it a million times, I'll say it again. The deal is the US government saying, we don't want you here. And you saying, if you make an exception, I bring a lot to the table, right? Mm-hmm. So now the conversation goes on. And for the O1 visa applicant, maybe someone who already has an H-1B, they're saying, I'm a really talented individual. And, I don't know about you, Alaattin, I was raised probably similarly to you, where it's kind of, you're uncomfortable bragging about yourself, right? You're uncomfortable telling the world how talented you are. We're kind of taught at a young age not to talk like that. For the O1 visa application, that's exactly what you need to do. You're there to brag. So you're telling the US government, I'm a really talented guy. The best way to understand the US government is to imagine the most skeptical person you know who doubts everything, right? Mm-hmm. So Alaattin shows up and he says, hey, I'm a really talented guy. Give me this visa. The US government says to you, Alaattin, I don't believe you. Prove it. All right, well, look at my resume. I've had really important jobs. I worked for, we have a client right now who works for Amazon. I work for Amazon and I had a really good job title. The US government will say, I don't believe that's a good job. Prove it to me. Well, it's with Amazon. They're a really famous company. The US government says, I don't believe Amazon's famous. Prove it to me, right? So every step along the way, what you're doing is you're gathering documentation that demonstrates every point you're making, right? Mm-hmm. So for the H-1B holder who's like, maybe I want to switch to an O1. It's looking like a better path for me today. What you want to start doing is thinking in that framework. If I were to brag about my career and my accomplishments and my audience was skeptical, what documents do I have to prove that I'm saying the truth? Well, I won an award at work. Okay, great. Let's get a copy of that award. I was written about in an online journal, online magazine about, me doing my work. Great. Let's pull a PDF of that article, right? I was invited to be a member of a group of computer engineers or of any type of professional group, and not just anyone can be a member. That's fantastic. Let's document that. So the O1 application is a process of gathering those documents with the visa franchise team, putting them together into a petition, and demonstrating to the US government that you really are as talented as we know you are.
Yeah, thanks for that. And we have a comment from Patrick Findauer. Patrick, thanks for joining and watching the live. Patrick's the co-founder of Visa Franchise. He says, and with Grant, Visa Franchise can offer a one-stop shop for the O1A sponsor applicants to allow them to keep their job and take on side hustles. Grant, would you like to elaborate a little bit on how the agent route for the O1 visa looks like, the kind of flexibility that it provides to the applicant?
Sure. And Patrick raises a great point, particularly for people who currently hold an H-1B or were thinking about an H-1B, right? and they may not even know this possibility exists. With the H-1B and with a lot of O-1 talent visas, the reality is, I don't want to say you're stuck, but you're kind of locked in working for one employer, right?
Correct.
Your employer has sponsored you for the H-1B or for the O-1, and that's who you got to work with the whole life of your visa. What Patrick mentions, and this is something that I don't know of another law firm that offers this benefit. Visa Franchise has an agency within its corporate structure. And what that means is if you sign on with Visa Franchise and if you designate Visa Franchise as your agent in your O-1 application, you can work for a number of different employers, all legally, all valid with your O-1 visa. So you might be, for example, a software engineer who consults, right? Or who moonlights, or who is used to having 3 or 4 jobs at the same time because you're writing code for a number of different employers. If you sign on with Visa Franchise and designate Visa Franchise as your agent, Visa Franchise can sponsor your petition and indicate to the US government that you will be using your talents for 2, 3, 4, 5 employers. And that gives you the freedom to, find the best employment situation for you. And it's lucrative because you can draw salary from all these different employers.
Yes. Well, that's definitely a great option that we have on our disposal. So anybody who's thinking about exploring that option and how that option looks like, you can go on visafranchise.com, and we will certainly right here. If you go on residency by talent, we have a top talent program where we will ask you to fill out a questionnaire. Again, that's going to take only a few minutes of your time. And we would like you to attach your CV, resume, your LinkedIn, and we'll sit down and have a conversation. And after the conversation, if we believe there's, further other things that we need to explore, we're going to send over certain documentation and questionnaires for you. And the more information we have, the better it is going to be. We'll circle back and send you a strategy of how we would put together your O-1A petition and how your life would look like. It's all free of charge, by the way. We invest our time in the security of your future. And if we can come up with a good way and a good strategy, we'll be ready to help you and assist you on that front as well. That being said, guys, I see some comments coming in, which may or may not be too relevant, but just out of courtesy, I'd like us to sort of touch upon these and answer these. Question for Grant, not about H-1B. Do you predict more progress with the F-2A visa category?
Good question. I guess what I would say, what I'm guessing the question asker is getting at is whether or not there are going to be more changes coming down the pike, right, with regard to some of these other categories. And I think it's a natural question because there's a lot changing these days. And so the best answer I could give, it's not a very satisfying answer, is we just kind of have to wait and see, right? These things happen incrementally. And as we've seen since January, a lot of these things get challenged in court, a lot of these new proposals. So I think best to take a wait and see approach.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you, Grant. Guys, thank you so much for joining the live stream. It's been a blast. It's a beautiful Saturday here in Miami Beach. It's 1 p.m. So I don't want to keep Grant for a long time. We want to go and enjoy the nice sunshine as the weather is beautiful. And this is what I would say. In the wake of these news, we made a decision at a company level, especially my team within the company. We said, okay, this is going to be an uphill battle for a lot of people and a lot of families. And what we want to do at the very least is to create content that is going to talk about alternative ways and visa routes for you guys to be able to stay within the United States of America. So for that, in order for that, you guys need to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification button. So whenever these contents are live, you could get to hear that and you could get to watch those videos. So that's at least what we can do. And over to you, Grant, for your last words before we end the live stream.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I guess my final word would be that obstacles are presenting themselves in some of these paths. The good news is there's a million of these paths, and we'd be really excited to talk with anyone about finding the right path for you. So don't lose hope. Don't be afraid. Keep the faith, and let's get you to the United States.
Grant, Dwyer, thank you, and a big thank you to our audience that's joined. Continue watching our videos, as in the upcoming days, we'll have much more content to sort of clear the air. Thank you very much, guys. Have a blast. Bye-bye.